Let's go straight to Davos live, and our policy editor Supriya Srinath is right there in conversation with Wipro's chairman Azim Premji. Supriya, over to you.
Thanks, Nisha. Thank you very much. The 43rd World Economic Forum kicks off, and we begin our coverage with the big interview, a rare exclusive, like they say, with none other than Azim Premji. Thank you very much for being with us. You were a Davos veteran, they say, but let's just talk about the 2 years, 2012 to 2013. Much, I would believe, has changed for India. In 2012, I think you were just negating people saying our story is not over, we're still very much there. 2013, I think the last 4 months, has the damage been undone in India?
Well, I think the intention is to try to undo some of the damage which has been done. So you've seen a spate of activities over the past 2.5 months, which are in a positive direction. I think the key issue before us is execution, grassroots execution in terms of what needs to get done.
Are you then here suggesting that some stuff has been done to undo the damage, but a lot more needs to be done? There was an economic crisis that India was facing. Do you think enough has been done to address that?
I think I will say enough has been done to address that when you see the execution on the ground. One acid test is these large projects which have been held up because of absence of coordination on permissions. And the whole objective of forming this ministerial committee headed by the Prime Minister is to get cracking on this and get it moving. When that gets moving, I'll say that the government is really functioning. It has to happen quickly because it will have a huge filtered out effect, positive effect.
You perhaps have you're perhaps touching the nerve of the issue. Many people believe a lot of the spate of reforms or economic decision making that has happened in the last 4-5 months has perhaps boosted sentiment. Do you think this will turn on the ground and boost growth? Because like you said, the big ticket projects have to move on. Unless they don't move on, we are perhaps not going to see investments kickstart, and that is imperative to growth.
But there is no question that the mood among the business leaders is more positive today than it was 3 months back. There's no question on that. And I've met enough of them to be able to make a reasonably intelligent judgment on that. That's positive. If the large projects get moving, where a lot of money is held up, that'll be positive plus. I think that's critical. But you will see more investments happening in India by Indian entrepreneurs than you have seen in the past 18 months. So far as the overseas investors are concerned, FII money is coming in, but that's hot money. I mean, it comes in and it goes. Yes. So it has its own danger attached to it. So far as FDI funds have, we are trying to invite FDI funds into the country, that pace has not picked up. And I think everyone's in a watch and wait mode. I think people are awaiting the outcome of the elections.
What will take Indian businessmen to pump in the investments that they perhaps have held back because of the lull that we saw in between? You say execution is one part, but what else?
I think that, most people have reached capacity. So to keep up even incremental growth and not go in for mega growths, they will have to start investing now. And they're getting enough confidence back that they will start investing. The only concern which is on the horizon is the outcome of the elections.
I'm going to speak to you about elections in just a bit, but you are one of the people who urged the government to bite the bullet on reforms. You did write letters to the Prime Minister. Are you a little disappointed that as a country we took the bold decisions only when we were pushed into the corner? You either take this decision or you downgrade it to the junk status. Does that disappoint you a little?
Oh, absolutely disappoints me. We have lost 3 years of growth because of it. Absolutely lost 3 years of growth because of it. But now the government is getting some momentum. Let's support them on it. There's no point being unduly critical on that.
But like we were talking about, you said everybody's awaiting the election outcome. Before the elections, I think the other thing that people are waiting around the world, and while we speak, Finance Minister Chidambaram is in Hong Kong trying to sell the India story. Are you also a little disappointed that some of these reforms have happened, A, because of course we were pushed into a corner, B, also because there was a change of regime in the finance ministry, and there seems to be this strictness to North Bloc than there was, say, 6-8 months back. Would you agree with me when I assess that perhaps economic decision making was completely at hostage of policy?
Yeah. I think the previous finance minister didn't have enough time for the finance ministry. He had just too many other directions. I think he was on 27 committees as chairman. How could it be humanly possible for him to focus on finance? That's exactly what happened. That set us back, seriously. Chidambaram is very much in the saddle. He's much more aggressive, much more decision-making oriented. That coupled with the panic of the rating is kick-started the government, which in a way is good, no?
So we reform when we are pushed into a corner, we reform only when there's a change in regime. But sir, India is also we are facing an economic crisis of sorts. We are facing a twin deficit. Our growth has crippled. Inflation is still stubbornly high. The RBI is in little or no mood to relent on rates. I don't think the crisis part of our economy is over, or is it?
And the more important, government should realize that it requires sustained results on the ground to get over the crisis. If we just sit back and say we've made this policy change, we've decided diesel prices are going to go up 50 paisa a month and the world is changed for us, that's not a fact. A lot of grassroots work has to be done.
Will you agree with some of the global assessments being made that finally the government is listening and not just talking to India Inc. or to global investors? Do you get a sense?
I think the government is trying to cooperate more with the opposition now. The major policy issues, I think they're reaching out more. Certainly the finance minister is reaching out more, which is a very positive trend you're seeing. They should expand on that. They should go into that. Because no government wants to inherit an economic mess, irrespective of whichever government which comes in. Right. No government wants to inherit a very high rate of unemployment of professionals. That's exactly what we're heading to.
Right.
We're not creating jobs anymore, and we were creating 10 million jobs a year with 8.5% growth.
It's an interesting bit that you talk about, because even in Hong Kong today, when the finance minister was speaking, he said something interesting. He said, we are seeing a lot more of practical politics where people are coming together for economic decision making. While it is perhaps a utopian thing to say when you're traveling overseas and addressing your global audience, do you not believe that when elections are nearing and when we are looking at 2014, you mentioned it yourself, we are perhaps going to see the standoff only worsen between the opposition and the treasury benches? Or are you hopeful that there will be a meeting of minds on most, at least, economic issues?
See, the most controversial issue was FDI.
And that's done?
That's done. I think the insurance bill will come up. I think some compromise will be reached on it, from what I understand. And that's good. It's because it will encourage money coming into insurance. Some other bills are not very controversial. So I think you'll see more progress in the parliament session in February that you've seen in the past. And it will be worthwhile for the government not to table something very, very controversial and get the whole parliament.
What would you call controversial?
I don't know what they have in their pipeline, which is very controversial. From the bills I saw, nothing is something which is very controversial.
Can stall proceedings.
And you also have to give, the new parliamentary affairs minister is working with the opposition well.
That's right. Actually, a lot of people believe the last parliamentary session was a lot of success because of him. Because we mentioned the parliament session in February, of course, that's going to be the big budget. It seems to be the make or break budget, because I think the fine balance that the government has to strike is, we are heading towards elections. They would want to bring in some big ticket populist measures, but we are also looking at rating agencies who, if your fiscal deficit expands, will downgrade you. They will not wait. They've threatened you twice in the last 3 months alone. What, according to you, will then that fine balance be?
No, I think the finance minister and the prime minister are determined to try to contain the fiscal deficit. They're making some progress towards it. My personal view is that a downgrade will not happen. There's enough intention on part of government to give the agencies more confidence. And you saw that in Moody's.
That's right, yes.
And Moody's is also responsible. But I think the government must be sustained in what they're doing. And they must implement on the ground. They must implement on the ground.
So the key really is the execution. Because we spoke about rating agencies, a lot of people, naysayers in North Block, believe that they are perhaps very stern towards us. They're not as stern across the rest of the world. Do you agree with that assessment?
I don't agree with that assessment. They have to have absolute standards, otherwise they'll lose credibility.
But right now you do not believe rating agencies have a reason to downgrade India? At least intentionally speaking, it doesn't.
That's a judgment I'm giving, for whatever that is worth. I'm not an economist, I'm not an expert on this.
You're one of the most respected voices in India.
That doesn't matter. I don't make a decision for the rating agencies. I wish I did that.
You do think that right now they don't perhaps have ample reason to downgrade India?
If we keep on this momentum, they see the change happening.
I have a question to ask you.
And they've also raised the duty on gold by 2%.
That they have. And they've taken a whole lot of other measures on gold.
They should have done it more.
Raise the duty more?
Yeah, but I think they're afraid that it will just give rise to more
a lot of smuggling and black. The question that one wants to ask you is the finance minister and the finance ministry seems to be in action mode at least. Gone are the first 6 months of 2012 when you saw nothing move on ground. Approvals wouldn't come in, meetings would end in limbo, nothing was happening. So from that point of view, perhaps we are talking about optimism, we are talking about confidence. But sir, still the story is about growth. Growth is not picking up. 5.5% is what we are staring at, the lowest in a decade's time. The RBI has said inflation is still very high. We are stuck in this growth versus inflation scenario and nothing seems to be breaking ground on that.
But that's what happens when you lose momentum. It cannot be recouped overnight.
How much more time do we take before we get back?
I think you'll get back 6.25% growth next year, maybe 6.5% if you're lucky. The monsoon is good, which is a far cry from the 8.5% we have averaged for many years. And please understand its implication on employment. Roughly every percentage of growth generates 1 million jobs, and every 1 million jobs generated as company jobs or permanent jobs generates between 2 and 3 surround jobs in terms of consumption power.
While we were talking about the budget, there is a lot of buzz that the finance minister could be looking at new taxes. Inheritance taxes, one of the taxes he could be looking at. Some people suggesting in policy making that he should increase the tax slabs. Which side of the debate do you throw your voice on?
Whatever I say, it's going to hit headlines.
It won't. So you're supposed to make headlines on an interview.
Let me be quiet on this issue.
Mr. Azim Premji doesn't go without giving a headline.
I don't know what is going to happen, frankly.
You do not know what is going to happen, but what is your view on it?
I don't want to voice an issue of philosophy. There's merit in raising marginal tax rates for the very, very wealthy.
Who are the very, very wealthy?
I suppose you define some cutoff limits now. And so far as inheritance tax is concerned, I think there are enough dodges available all over the world where people have been able to dodge out of it by creating very complex structures. What you will force very wealthy people in India is to create very complex structures which will still protect them from inheritance taxes. And it shouldn't give rise to a spiral of negative sentiment. That's the least what we require today. Because in the short run, it will not pick up much money.
Exactly. At least the inheritance tax won't. But raising taxes, you are perhaps one of the rarest voices of India Inc. we've been speaking to who have said there's perhaps a little merit in tweaking tax rates, increasing the tax for the rich. Why this outcry each time raising taxes comes to the debate, comes to the table? India Inc. gets up in arms. This is going to, vitiate sentiment.
This is very focused. I think the government wants to raise some resources. I don't think they'll get too much resources out of it, but they want to send some signals.
Are those the right signals and the right time to send it?
I don't have strong views for it or strong views against it. In principle, how can you say that rich people shouldn't pay more taxes? I mean, you have to be fair in a country with this kind of poverty. And I think the rich people are bringing it upon themselves with their conspicuous consumptions. I mean, it is to a state of absurdity. Really to a state of absurdity.
And not many people are actually as philanthropic as you are, and which is why it's perhaps on the government's mind.
No, but don't underestimate. Indian rich people are doing philanthropy. They're doing it on a low-key basis. And we have been quite involved with them. What
you would like them to do a lot more, though.
Yes, but they're facing limitations of knowing how to scale, in which we are trying to give advice to a little core group which we have formed. They are grouping, can they use other NGOs to leverage what they are doing? Who are the good ones? Their grouping is what is the right structure to have. They're grouping in terms of how much should they leave their family and how much should they give in philanthropy. Because that feeling that you have to leave virtually everything to your family is very ingrained into Indian psyche.